Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Mastering Dungeons. At least in the top 10, I hope, of your favorite podcasts out there. And we are here to talk more games. I am here, as I am always here, with one Teos Abadia. Hey, Teos, what is up?
Ceiling. It's no, what has been going on? Ooh, you know what's really up? I managed to play me some Aliens. This thanks to one of our Patreon members, Megan J, who is a great DM, ran several of us on our Discord through an alien scenario, Chariot of the Gods, and it was really freaky. A lot of things went wrong. I
That's
had
what's
one of
supposed to
those
happen,
like,
right?
what's that?
That's what's supposed to happen?
Yeah, but it's still, it hurts when it happens and mentally. And I did have a really nice moment where like I had to pilot a ship, before it all blew up kind of thing, and that was kind of fun. But we got through part one, and we've got more to come, and I'm really excited about it because it was super fun.
Sweet. I received in the mail my copy of Citadel of the Unseen Sun,
Me
the
too.
full pack. Wow. I
That is
didn't
gorgeous.
realize that is a lot.
Like that
I'm
big.
on I'm on chapter 5 of 6 in my home campaign, and now I can use all the tokens and the maps, and
Nice. Yeah.
oh, I can't wait to bust that out. But that was a heaping helping of content from Ghostfire Gaming. So uh, looking forward to
I
using
mean,
it.
content is such a bad word for how great that thing is, because it is.
Oh,
Yeah, it's really impressive, beautiful. All the covers, the attention, the layout, the art type stuff. I mean, it's the kind of thing you just want on your shelf because it's just beautiful, and that golden sun color that everything is really nice. Well
yeah,
done,
yeah.
Ghostfire Gaming.
Even the 3D bookmark
Yes.
freaked me out. I was like, wait, it's moving. What? Oh my. It's double-sided. Whoa.
I actually meant to bring
But
that on the show and hold it up for the people who can see the show, but
oh,
oh
I
yeah,
I've got it right here.
oh there you go. Yeah, look at that, and it is like, yeah, it's all like, I don't know, it radiates weird 3D-ish
Yeah,
qualities when you're looking at it in person, which is very cool.
it's really cool. It's really cool. But speaking of really cool, we have some really cool listeners out there, and sometimes they ask us questions. So we are going to answer some of those questions right now.
Question one: what's wrong with you?
So much, as we've already
No.
discussed before we started recording. But let's hear from George PR via Mastodon. When designing a game, what are the trade-offs and design considerations for a character gaining more hit points as they advance versus having a set of number of hit points or wounds from the start?
Mm.
Relatedly, why does D&D 5e have you gain hit points each level?
Mm.
So a couple different questions there. I'm going to let Teo start this question off.
Yeah, I mean, so I think the simplest answer is that historically it went in that direction as a way to give you something to strive for. Right? This is the idea you would go up in level and you would gain things. And one of the ideas is you gain more resiliency. But from a game perspective, what you're able to do when you have that is you now have a greater breadth of threats you can apply to the characters and situations you can apply to the characters because they can handle it, right? Like if you imagine a game where everybody has one hit point, and Shadow Dark's a little bit like this, uh,
Mhm.
everything kills you, right? And in fact, one time when I played Shadow Dark at 0 level, it didn't matter what I rolled for damage, they were dead, you know?
Mhm.
And so all threats were terrible threats. You couldn't have a scary beholder, or it was all just scary. And that shrinks the latitude of what you can do. Now, Shadow Dark does have levels, you do gain hit points over time. And D&D, of course, does, and many games do, but some don't. And in those games, then everything you face has to fit within that band. And that design has to do a lot of work up front to be resilient enough to cover all the play of a campaign and all the ups and downs, right? How do you represent the easy monster, the easy encounter, the hard thing when it's all in that one band? What do you think, Sean?
Yeah. It's that. It's as characters advance, how do you want them to feel threatened or be threatened? If you don't advance their hit points, then you have to make lower level monsters uh, not as likely to hit them
Hmm.
because they're going to do the same amount of hit points.
Yeah.
And so you could do it that way, or you do it the way it's done most of the time, which is 2,000 commoners shooting crossbows at a dragon are going to hit that dragon 5% of the time. 5%. Oh, here I said I
Yeah. Yeah.
can't think, and I'm going to try to do large amounts of math in my head.
Some number,
Right.
some small number.
Right. So we'll say 100. 100 hit for a D8. That's 100 D8 of damage done to this dragon. Should the commoners be able to kill the dragon? If you say yes, then you're all set there. If you say no, you need to find a way for that dragon to survive 200 crossbow bolts. Now,
Mm-hmm.
that could be hit points. It could be some sort of damage reduction, damage resistance. You could do lots of different things, but you have to keep all of that math and all of that
Yeah.
story focused rules development in mind. So
Yeah.
by doing bonded accuracy,
Yeah.
we're saying that you are going to be hit more, even by lower level creatures if you're a higher level character. So you can make 50 kobolds a threat to a 15th level character in terms of them damaging.
Yeah.
And that's where that design comes into play.
Yeah, and the other thing that's just that games where you have something to strive for as in gaining levels are exciting. That's why we see the concept of leveling and experience across everything, right? You see it
Mm-hmm.
in all kinds of apps that aren't even games, right? Like you gain XP, and it's like, well, okay, you know,
Mm-hmm.
you are a level 17, I don't know, Excel user. Like that wouldn't shock us anymore, right? Because it's such a
Mm-hmm.
common parlance. And in the D&D space or in any game, you have to think of, well, what am I giving you every level? And hit points just becomes an obvious thing, then can fit into that scale of threats. And part of the trick there is that it won't become meaningless. Like I think fourth edition was a little on the edge where, I'm fighting a goblin skull reaver, and then I'm fighting a goblin whatever that's like a tougher version, elite
Right.
goblin skull reaver.
Yep.
Am I still playing the same exact encounter really, where all of us have moved sliders up? You don't want it to feel too much that way. D&D has an asset, which is that it has historically awesome monsters: Red Dragon, Beholder, Displacer Beast, Gelatinous Cube at various levels of play, Pit Fiend,
Yep.
that you want to encounter. So even though the numbers might all be sliders or somewhat can be argued as sliders, the excitement of the coloring of it, the skinning of it, keeps you going. And then you can add fun monster things, the whip, the Pit Fiend, that kind of stuff.
Sure. So I hope that that very brief description of why hit points rise in some games, I hope that helps. From Gaffer Dyer via Mastodon, for those TTRPG groups who continue to play 5e for the foreseeable future, how many do you think will just continue to use the 2014 PHB as their base rules? I assume the answer will vary based on demographics. So paraphrasing something else Gaffer said, for me, 2014 is likely to be the default due to high switching costs of getting my group and onto the new books. Yes. Here's the thing. We were told that the rules would be compatible. And I have a feeling that is the truth. I think you could take a class from the 2024 books, play them alongside a class with the 2014 books. The rules will be similar enough that everyone could have a session. What's the difference then? The difference is the small things. One of those small things is a big thing, which is the power level. So if you get two groups playing, I'm playing the 2024 Barbarian, I'm playing the 2014 Barbarian, great, that's fine, we can all play. And then the 2014 Barbarian player looks at what the 2024 Barbarian is doing and says,
I want weapon
yes, the
mastery.
rules are the same, but, and maybe it's, I want my weapon mastery, and maybe it's, I don't care about weapon mastery. And I think we're going to talk a little bit more about that later. But so do I think some groups will stay? Yes. Do I think some groups will move forward? Absolutely. When you start mixing it, though, that's when it will come to a comparison. And if you want a slightly more power focused, a slightly more, dare I say, complicated game, especially in terms of combat, then you are going to want to move forward to the 2024 rules. And that's
Mm.
sort of expected. I think that's baked into the design, if you will,
Yeah.
and the marketing.
Yeah, I mean, at the individual group level, I think that that's exactly the kind of thing that's happening, right? You just need one player in a group to start kind of delving into it and it becomes interesting, or you buy the new book, right? Like they have said they're going to remake Tasha's and Xanathar's because they're robbing enough parts for it to put into the core that they'll remake them. Well, when they remake those, you're going to be expected to buy them. Well, now they're different and they're going to play off of the core books. So what do you want to do? Do you want to like not buy them? Do you want to buy them and kind of try to mishmash it in? Or are you going to go to the new core books? And those are the decisions that invested active players have to do. But you know, the question of do I think people will advance, or let's see, the actual phrasing was how many do you think will just continue? I think in this situation, it kind of doesn't matter, or maybe this specific question doesn't matter, right? Because of that compatibility, especially. So if you want to keep doing 2014, no problem at all for Wizards, if you're willing to buy stuff. If you were to switch to 2004, stay on 2014, and stop all purchases because you consider everything new to be not you, that then would be an actual problem. But if you want to stick to 2014 and still buy the new adventures and buy the t-shirts and pay for the D&D Beyond and the whatever, I think Wizards was a-okay with that because their game should be bringing new players in and expanding the audience. That's how you get those millions of players handbooks sold. So that's the main, that should be the eyes on the prize, right?
Mm-hmm. And that brings a question about D&D Beyond is, will they continue to support the 2014 classes? Or if you go create a new character, will it just update you
Yeah.
with the basic rules, with the free rules? Will that update to, if there are free basic rules for the 2024 book, is
Yeah.
that what new players will see when they for free go in to make a new character?
And
Uh,
yeah,
it's
will the basic rules be updated, right? When I asked about that D&D Beyond question, right, of how are you going to handle these changes, right? Are you going to have the you know, Chill Touch 2014, Chill Touch 2024 clearly labeled as they did with the Mordenkainens versus the, you know, the multiverse monsters versus the older Volos and so on. And really, like, there were a lot of people in the room and they all got these looks of like like a very I don't think there were that many actors in the room. I think they really didn't know and they hadn't thought about it. And so one presumes that they have now thought about it. I sure hope so. But I don't know what that answer is, right? Because one must think through the day 2024 core books drop. Can I still buy a 2014 player's handbook? And how is it represented in the system? And they'll have to figure that out to keep it all straight.
Yeah. And that's one of the things that having a siloed system of studios or whatever is a problem, right?
Yeah.
You get your particular focus and you go to it and you do the best job you can, and no one at D&D Beyond ostensibly is thinking about that because they're working on their D&D Beyond stuff.
Yeah.
And that falls then to the managers to think about those things. And the managers, while they may be great managers, aren't necessarily experts in the things that both sides of this
Yeah.
silo are doing. So they're not thinking
like here's a question to just, you know, like, is scary when I put on my tech project manager kind of hat is,
Mhm.
hey, is the virtual tabletop going to handle 2014 stats?
Mhm.
Because you're going to have
Yeah.
all this player base that says it's compatible, you should support it. So I want to use the 2014 goblin,
Mhm.
not, or the 2024, or both, you know, like, oh,
Right. Yeah, it's a thing,
it'll be
and
interesting.
we will see the ramifications of that as 2024 continues, ends, and we get into 2025. Finally, From my friend Martin Hughes via Morse code, I'm going to go with. I was going to go with semaphore. Uh, Martin is our wonderful graphic designer at Ghostfire Gaming, and he had a couple questions for us. One, do you both feel that people playing, do you both feel that people playing Baldur's Gate are having an impact on D&D currently?
Mhm.
My answer is absolutely. It's just a matter of what that impact is. Exactly is it affecting? I think it's definitely affecting an understanding that D&D as a brand does have some power, does have some heft. And so it will encourage more partnerships,
Mm.
more ways to introduce D&D through other means and other media. Is it affecting the game itself? Probably a bit, not greatly. But as designers and as players who play both, play through the game and see, oh, it's really cool that this spell does this
Mhm.
way here. Oh, I wish D&D did that. That is
Yeah.
going to, at some point, filter back to the design team or to third-party designers
Mhm.
who can leverage that free market research
Yeah.
to push things in the direction that people love and recognize.
And my answer is it's huge because you now have another enormous like wide number of people that are exposed to D&D through yet another angle. Or you have the Stranger Things, you have a couple of other shows like that, and then you have this Baldur's Gate phenomena to where not only people already know what D&D is, but now they're interacting with it. Even if it's not quite the game, it's pretty darn good. And what I've seen at two conventions recently, and in Seattle that I ran the D&D for new players, is a vast understanding, really widespread understanding of Baldur's Gate 3 as their kind of expression of what D&D is when they are new. And we're talking with, hundreds and hundreds of players coming in and trying the game. And we would make a joke, like we would stand outside to try to get in some new people in just on the hallways, and we would say things like it's like Baldur's Gate 3 but with real people. And everybody laughs. I mean, everybody understands the joke. And I didn't think that would be the case when we started making the joke, and boy, it plays out because everybody understands that game if you're in those kinds of gaming circles. And that's an amazing asset to have that will endure, right? That'll last for a long time, bringing people into our hobby.
Mhm. And as we are going to report, or maybe not, no, we're not going to report it, so I'll report it right now. Fallout, the
Mm,
RPG sold out
yeah.
thanks to Fallout, the TV show. And we are seeing more and more of people gravitating toward a role-playing game, whereas before they wouldn't have.
Yeah.
And the younger folks who I teach or talk to keep bringing up how much their generation loves media that they can be involved in. It's great
Mm,
to watch a show, but they want to be a part of it.
yeah.
Whether that's in a chat room discussing what they're watching, or as a video game where they can insert their own character into the story that's being told.
Hmm.
And we're seeing more and more of it, and Baldur's Gate 3 will be another step in that process for D&D.
Yeah, absolutely.
The second question Martin asks is, when playing RPGs, do you have a preferred beverage or snack? What you got going for us, Teos?
I like a dark beer. I like Chicago mix.
Mhm.
That's the whole, popcorn,
Yeah.
caramel, covered corn,
Mhm.
peanuts.
I like a good cider,
Mhm.
and I like jelly beans.
Oh,
I was reintroduced to jelly beans at the table a couple of weeks ago, and oh, they're addictive. They're not good for you, but my
yeah. No, they're
gosh,
delicious. I love jelly beans. I deliberately stay very far away from them most of my life.
yeah, me too. I would never buy them, but they end up in the house somehow, and it's
Wonderful.
it's not It's not pretty.
Hmm.
And being from jolly old England, Martin also lets us know that Wembley Arena has a 12,500 capacity, whereas Wembley Stadium, which is the national large
Hmm.
stadium, can hold 90,000 to 100,000 people, depending on if it's all seating or if they're standing. So when we said that
Yeah.
Critical Role sold out Wembley Arena, that was that 12,000 seat arena, not the 90 to 100,000 stadium.
And I was reading that Madison Square Garden holds, under 20,000, and it varies by event. So like hockey's like
Mhm,
18,000, NBA is 20, and they can
mhm.
play it with it a fair bit. And so my guess is for a show like that, they may, reduce it somewhat. But either way, these are all impressive numbers, right? That's all win.
Mhm. So thank you, Martin. Thank you for listening. And we are now going to get to our news and commentary section, where we are going to begin with the aforementioned D&D Beyond, because it has updated its marketplace. Thank you to one of our patrons, Tom Dunn, for noticing this change. And tell us, Teos, what did Tom point out to us?
Yeah, Tom pointed out, and then it became a big deal. Like it started to be discussed on the D&D Beyond Discord, which is the D&D Discord, and it got pretty heated because not only was it a revised look and feel to be more of this marketplace type situation, but it added features and then it removed some things. So, for example, you can
Mhm,
now purchase digital and physical books directly from D&D Beyond. Whereas
hmm,
before it would say, here's this physical book, go off and buy it somewhere else. They might have bundled it for a new introduction, a new product coming in, like Book of Many Things. But now it is most of these products have the ability to purchase both directly from them. This is not true for partner products. Sorry, Ghostfire, sorry, Cold Press, and so on. But the incremental cost varies by product. So I looked at a couple. Deck of Many Things is $30 for the digital, $80 for both. Tasha's is 30 digital, 50 for both. And those are pretty reasonable savings for digital and physical bundles. And if everybody rewinds their brain, you'll think back to a time when we were all like, why can't you buy a bundle of the digital and the physical? And that was not possible for a really long time. Now it looks like this is really being implemented as a standard. Um, but they removed the ability to purchase subclasses, feats, and all that kind of thing a la carte. So this ability to just purchase an item has gone, and so fans are pretty unhappy about that. A D&D Beyond representative said, a la carte purchases are no longer supported. However, any individual items you previously purchased, you're going to keep on using, kind of thing.
mhm,
Um, the They also removed, it seems, legendary bundles where you could get everything for a highly discounted price. That seems to be gone. Maybe they saw it as being just untenable over the long term to maintain it.
right.
The short summaries for each book have these sort of like icons, including the edition of D&D they're written for. And that makes you wonder, are they going to maybe shift things that are on DM's Guild to now also be available here?
Hmm,
That would be interesting. Are they going to tag 2024 differently than 2014? Unclear.
mhm.
But there's some potential, right? There's the flexibility there of sort of some interesting things happening because they did for some reason bother to list the edition, and that's an interesting thing. The other thing I heard through Discord was a warning that if you already own a product, in the past it was very clear of saying you own this, so it would, I
Mhm.
think, basically couldn't buy it, right? Because you already own it. Now,
Right.
because it's not just thinking of things digitally, it doesn't know whether you, it seems to have forgotten, it no longer tracks whether you own something or not. So you can take a product you already own, place it in your cart, buy it. It will at no point say to you, you own this, and you could end up owning the same thing more than once for no actual benefit, including purely digital. So you got to be a little more careful about that. It's not just going to tell you that you own something or don't own something.
Interesting. We also have news from Hasbro about their continued investment in video games. So Dan Iob, Hasbro's head of digital development, gave an interview to gamesindustry.biz on their video game plans. It notes that Monopoly Go and Baldur's Gate 3 were huge successes, but they were externally developed by Scopely in the case of Monopoly Go, and Larian Studios in the case of Baldur's Gate 3. Ayub has stated that Hasbro has over $1 billion in games being developed right now. Now, the company itself, Hasbro itself, owns 4 different AAA studios. Atomic Arcade, that's working on the G.I. Joe Snake Eyes game. A Montreal-based developer designer called Invoke Studios that's working on an unspecified D&D game. There are 2 Austin-based studios, Skeleton Key, that is working on, quote, something spooky, and Archetype, which is run by James Olin, and they're working on a completely new franchise called Exodus. And the quote about this was, what we're trying to do there is have the tail wag the dog a little bit and have things going the other direction for the company, which would be something new where we can create a new IP through video games and then take advantage of that size and scale that Hasbro has to do other things with it as well. So now instead of licensing out D&D to other game developers, game studios, they want to make something that they can license out to, let's say Netflix, to make the new, whatever
like Arcane kind of thing. Totally.
About the Exodus franchise. And so that's very interesting. And it shows how much more revenue that a video game company makes as opposed to a tabletop role-playing game company. It's not even in the same stratosphere. I was doing some research that said that in 2023, it was estimated that every tabletop role-playing games and everything involved in that made $1.5 billion. And I thought, that sounds high, but if you add everything, if you add all the digital tabletops and all the accessories and minis and all of that, I could see that getting to 1.5 billion. Whereas Monopoly Go made 2 billion in 10 months.
Yeah.
So that shows you the scope and the scale of these 2 industries. And I am not surprised at all that Hasbro and by extension Wizards of the Coast is leaning very, very hard into video game investment.
Yeah, what's different here, Shawn, is that they can have this enormous success and revenue. What gets interesting is the profit side of things and the risk side of things, right? So you have to invest heavily to do that, right? Long development times for all these games. You can run into problems any of many ways on trying to run these products and build things. I mean, even when we look at Baldur's Gate 3, we had delays at multiple time periods. We had the prequel version come out, or what do you call it? The early edition came out.
Yeah.
And people were not all that impressed with it, right? It was a lukewarm reception, and that was like a year before they finally got the game out. And then it was this smash success. I mean, you wouldn't have guessed it based on all the troubles, right? We also have heard of, and this article talks talks about one example where in the 1990s, Hasbro set up what's called Hasbro Interactive Division, and it acquired Atari as the brand and Microprose to build retro-themed games, and then it sold that in December 2000, right? So 10 years later, having not gotten a lot of benefit out of it. And if you follow our show, we've covered in the past how Hasbro made all these major hiring and buying decisions in the video game sector in 2021, right? So this is now for 3 years that we've been at this. And in 2022, CEO Chris Cox said there are at least 6 D&D games in development. That's a long time where only one of those has come out, right? A lot of the studios you mentioned, or those studios you mentioned, they were there back then being developed and invested in, burning all of that money that 1 billion represents. And then in 2023, Wizards of the Coast shuttered at least 5 video game projects and laid off a number of people and closed off partner studio relationships and others. That was a big deal, right? And then Dark Alliance came out, and that was a disaster, lost money.
Mhm.
And now with Baldur's Gate 3 and Monopoly Go, it's all turned around and we're all super enthusiastic. Well, how
Yeah.
long will that enthusiasm last? It depends, right? The next thing to come out could really decide that for us, whether it's going to be seen as a success to keep investing in, or do we backpedal?
Mhm.
Who knows?
Yep. It's true. And you like to think that you mitigate the risk by putting money into 4 different projects that gives you each a chance to hit that $2 million right
Yeah.
promised land with that Monopoly Go hit. So it's definitely something that we will be keeping an eye on because we like video games and we like games in general, but it also does impact the role-playing game
Yeah.
industry. So we will follow along with that. On the tabletop side of things, the Tabletop Game Designer Association is launching. What is that? It is a 501c6 nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting tabletop game designers of all types of tabletop games, including board games, role playing games, card games, miniatures games, and others, whether it's mass market, specialty, or hobby. So, this is something that you can join if you are a tabletop game designer of any of those types of games to get access to resources and events, such as looking over contracts for you to point out any potential problems, trying to get more recognition for game designers, like getting names on boxes for board games or getting names on books for
Yeah.
published book publishing games and to help dispute any resolutions that tabletop designers may have with their work.
It's pretty neat.
It
I
is,
looked at their
yeah,
designer resources section, and it is nice to see, top 3 things to ask for in a publishing contract and licensing checklist. It's very board game focused in a lot of ways,
yes,
with a tip towards the wider tabletop, but it's definitely you look at the list of people involved or anything like that. It's definitely a strong board game piece, but they've got still really interesting information. What conventions can you go to, and what are national organizations out there, and international organizations, online communities that you can reach out to. So there's a lot here to look at. Really worth going there and at least taking a look at the resources that may be useful. But these are common questions. I mean, I've had a lot of folks over the years that have said to me, "Hey, if I'm creating a board game, what do I do? Like, what do I look for in a partner? How do I approach that?" And so it's nice that they're going through and trying to answer some of that up front, and then creating a large organization that over time hopefully can support creators better.
there you go. For $80, you can get an early access membership to all of those things. There's also I think it's a 70 or a $60 associate membership, which gets you access to some of the things, but no voting rights within the
Mhm.
organization. So you can check that out at www.ttgda.org. AI is back in the news here with Wizards of the Coast. Why are they talking about AI now, Teos, and what are they saying?
Well, there have been some events recently, and I haven't followed it super detailed, but there have been more events that caused Wizards to decide to put together an FAQ for the wider companies that are under it. So you have here on this new web page, which is part of the Wizards support site, you can get to this FAQ, and it has links to statements for both Magic and D&D. It tries to answer likely questions you may have. It it's got an interesting tone to it. In some ways, it's like you could almost put like "you bonehead" at the end of every statement. It's a little bit. It comes off a little defensive. But it says things like, wizards may not respond to social media or their inquiries regarding whether something is AI, though they're going to look into things. But sort of like, look, we don't have to defend ourselves on every single accusation where someone thinks one of our pieces of art looks like it's AI generated. And we don't have to respond to every question you ask. And it's true, they don't, right? Like they don't have to do that. And it's an interesting discussion that we have in a world where so many I mean, every software I own, I feel like, is saying to me, now with the power of AI, and here's Wizards trying to say, no, we didn't use AI again. And then sometimes they find they did, which of course is the worst part. But they say, and they also say, we're not going to disclose if, when, or why we decide not to work with an artist, nor whether that's for some time period. You know, they might go back and work with them in the future. And they just try to, I think, in a lot of ways say, look, we have to maintain some flexibility. And a real quote that captures this is they have a question at the end. If there is only one takeaway I should have from this FAQ, what should it be? And the stated answer is human beings are fallible, whether it is a conglomerate of human beings like a company or single human being like an artist. And a lot of it seems to be that, right? Like this is sort of a cry for please have some patience around the fact that this is complicated and difficult. We're trying to do what we can. Here are these links to what we're doing. You know, we can't handhold you and answer your every question.
Right. I mean, but before that, though, they did say, listen, we ask our artists not to use AI. We have new documents that we send them to say specifically what they can and cannot do. So we're not changing our stance on that. It's just this. Sometimes artists send us things and we have no way of checking, so it goes. And we will take care of it. We're just not going to answer every single And it's also important to remember that Wizards of the Coast and any company may hire outside firms, marketing firms, outside firms to do lots of different things, event management, et cetera, et cetera. And while Wizards can say, you know, please don't use AI art, then that's one more step removed, because that marketing company may hire an artist that uses AI art, even when they're not supposed to. So it's a mess that is very hard to resolve. And I think this FAQ just, as Teos said, while maybe taking on a tone of exasperation, it might be well-founded that, yes, we're against AI art, but we also have to get on with our business. And so here's where we stand.
Yeah, I mean, you know, for my work, my day job, I have to often create presentations. And one of the things that you can do these days is very quickly pull in all this stock art, right? I don't know where Microsoft's getting this stock art from. And it could be AI generated or not. And I don't have the time in creating a PowerPoint to think through my slide deck's art sources. It's also very throwaway, where I'm using this very quickly to do a presentation that's going to be gone, but I don't have the time to go through all the steps. And you can imagine how this is true in various different organizations that are creating things for other people. You know, it's a short ad campaign, whatever, and probably 3 steps down, you know, is that company that you're employing with that's creating this marketing piece going to use something, you know, who knows? Very hard to tell, especially when all of their tools, because I can tell you every tech tool I have is trying to tell me how it's unlocked the power of AI. And they are at the opposite side of tagging things as AI generated. They're trying to tell me the whole thing is, even when it isn't, right? Because they think that sells. So it's difficult.
Yep. Now, non-AI related, we're getting to our creator corner, starting with the WondLa TV show coming to Apple Plus on June 28th. You want to tell us about this, Teos? This is your wheelhouse right here.
Yeah, I'm very excited about this. I read the WondLa series with my kids, and I enjoyed reading it as well. Congratulations to Tony DiTerlizzi, known for his amazing Planescape and other D&D art, his Spiderwick Chronicle books and all that, and the WondLa series of novels that he wrote, which is the story of a girl who grows up in a very strange, mysterious, futuristic base, and she's being taught things by a robotic mother. So there is an AI there, I guess. And then she starts discovering things about the larger world. And this is a great series of novels. Highly recommend it. And then it's going to be a TV series animated by Skydance Animation with a star-studded cast doing the voices. There's 7 episodes in the first season. DiTerlizzi was an executive producer. And we've got a link in our show notes to the story where you can read more. But June 28th on Apple TV Plus. I'm excited about that.
Also exciting is DM David and his blog series. And his recent blog is about player monster symmetry. In this blog, David discusses how D&D's roots had some differences between the rules that applied to monsters and the rules for player characters. He gives that great example of, you're in a dungeon and monsters are using this door all the time, but when the characters get there, the door is stuck and they have to make a check to open it. Um, Later editions, especially when you get to third edition, they impose more symmetry on this player monster relationship so that the monsters and the players are following pretty much the same rules. Now we are getting to more lack of symmetry again. And David points out, like, RPGs like Daggerheart do away with this symmetry with the game master rolling a d20 while the players are rolling 2d12 and adding them together. And we're going to talk all about Daggerheart in our second segment today, so hang in there for that. In Numenera, players roll to avoid an attack while game masters, uh, don't
Narrate.
roll to hits.
Yeah.
And David also points out that 5e works this way with contests. While a character hides, they roll a stealth check, often against the DC set by the monster's perception, where if a monster is hiding, it's the characters that roll a perception or investigation check in order to figure out if they see them.
Yeah.
So this symmetry versus non, it can be a big deal to certain players. And one of the things about Daggerheart that our game master Chris Sneezak said was, I love asymmetrical games. I love it when the players are playing one thing and I'm playing another as the game master, and we can let the best of both worlds instruct our game and instruct our storytelling, as opposed to trying to shoehorn in rules that make it symmetrical but that don't necessarily make sense or make the game or the story any better for it.
Can you imagine in fifth edition if you had like a dungeon where like the monster runs through a door and then it is stuck when the PC goes up to the players would probably lose their mind and get like so angry.
Right.
It makes me want to just do that just to see reactions.
Good time.
But it is, I mean, I found with Numenera, it was frustrating for me that I didn't roll and I didn't sort of use the rules, if you will, because it made it hard for me to remember the rules because the players were doing it constantly and remembering how everything worked. And I wasn't doing that at all. So then they would ask a question or feed off of something on their character sheets. And I felt like I didn't understand the game. And I've been running it, for weeks and I'm still like feeling rusty. And that felt strange to me. And I also didn't like, I'm fine with narrating, but not doing things when they were doing things felt weird and felt off to me. So it's not, it can be in some ways not for everybody.
Yeah, for sure. Now tell us finally about the Oracle Monster Generator, Teos.
Yeah, so it's just launched. By the time you listen to this show, Nord Games' latest project is a deck of tarot-sized cards that help you create cool monsters and situations. And it's pretty neat. They have a free preview you can download by going to their BackerKit website. The cards come in 7 categories based on monster environments such as forest, underground, and swamp. And then cards within the categories help you identify the type of monster, what it's doing, its role, a special ability, and an interesting story angle. So you can, if you look at the preview, you can kind of see like, oh, okay, I get this card within the desert environment, and here's what this monster is trying to do, and here's what it does in the area, what it's and something interesting about it, right? And so it really kind of create the whole encounter and color of the scene behind all of these monster angles. So very cool. Check it out. It ends on June 6th.
Yep, and you can find that at BackerKit, or you can look at our show notes and click the link.
Yep.